Hello, and welcome to our Veterans Day program, Veterans with Paws. My name is Anne Grimes Rand. I'm the president and CEO of the USS Constitution Museum in Boston, and we are so pleased to have you join us for a wonderful program today. Since it is Veterans Day, I want to start with a special thanks to all who have served our nation. Those who are in uniform today and serving us, you will meet a few veterans and their military working dogs who have served our nation, but I know that there are many people across the country who are joining us today, and I want to thank you all for your service. We are so pleased to be partnering with American Humane on today's program. They do terrific work to bring these military working dogs home, to reunite them with their handlers, and you will hear those terrific stories today. This program is co-hosted by the USS Constitution Museum because aboard USS Constitution, America's ship of state, there was a dog who served during the War of 1812. So during our program, you will meet our veterans and their working dogs. And today, I am joined by Garrier the Terrier. This is a stuffed animal who reminds us of the terrier who served aboard Constitution during the War of 1812. One of the lieutenants, Beekman von Hoffman, brought aboard a terrier, and he probably caught rats in the hold. We know from the journals that at one point he was on deck and he started barking and pointing. And shortly thereafter, the lookout high up in Constitution's masts called out a ship on the horizon. So to start our program with a little view from USS Constitution, I bring you Garrier the Terrier, and then you'll get to meet the working dogs who are serving in our armed forces today, or recently retired working dogs. So welcome to our program. It is my privilege to introduce to you today three folks who have served and have their dogs with them now, as well as a veterinarian from the American Humane. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each of our participants to introduce both themselves and their dogs, your service, where you served, what branch of the service you were in. Give us a little bit of introduction to the two of you, and then we'll have a few more questions. We'll learn more about the process of training a dog, of working together overseas, the reunification process. And for all of our friends who are joining us from afar, we will also have Q&A at the end of the program. So I invite you to enter any questions you may have in the chat during the program. I'm afraid we won't be able to answer all of the questions, but we will have some time to answer a few questions at the end. So that's what we will be doing over the next hour. And without further ado, I am going to introduce our panelists. And I'd like to start with Corporal Aaron Stice and the military working dog Kkeaton.
Hi, my name's Aaron Stice, and I was in the Marine Corps from 2007 to 2012. While I was there, I was a canine handler the entire time. And this was a working dog that I got when I was a police officer for the Marine Corps as well, MWD Kkeaton, which came from the breeding program at Lackland.
Terrific. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. And you're joining us from Texas today, aren't you?
Correct. I'm in San Antonio.
Great. Next, I'd like to introduce Staff Sergeant Charles Ogin and military working dog Robic. You're muted still, I think, Charles. That gets us started.
Hi, I'm Steph Sarnogan, still in the United States Army. Been a canine handler since 2012, started at Fort Bliss, ended up at Joint Base Meyer, Henderson Hall, which is the old guard. Been with Robic since 2014. He was born and raised at Lackland Air Force Base and then shipped off to us. And right now he serves his country by helping me recruit down here in Kissimmee.
That's great. Thanks for joining us. And next, I would like to introduce Sergeant Brendan Cabey and Ramos. It was during the reunification of Ramos and Brendan which happened right in front of USS Constitution here in Boston in the Charlestown Navy Yard. That was my first introduction to this terrific group and American Humane.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brendan Cabey, and this is Ramos, looking for some snacks. We served in the Marine Corps together. I served from 2015 to a year ago, almost this week. I got out last year in 2019. I was a canine handler for the majority of my time, and I worked with Ramos from the December of 2017 until my departure from the Marine Corps last year. And yeah, we served aboard MCAS Iwakuni in Japan together.
Great. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us. We also have Dr. Lesa Staubus from American Humane. She is a staff veterinarian who has the privilege of meeting all of these dogs and many others. So Lesa, if you could tell us a bit, you're joining us from Oklahoma today.
Yes, Anne, thank you so much. And thank you for hosting this. And I just can't tell you how joyous it is for me to see all of these wonderful service members and their dogs here today. It really brings a tear to my eye because I know how special each of these bonds are. And we're just so happy. American Humane could not be happier to celebrate veterans and to celebrate our four-legged veterans as well.
Thank you. Well, we want to start by learning a little bit about the training and how you have each learned to work with your dog. And I'm going to start by asking Erin to give us a little bit of the training philosophy and how you become a proficient handler.
Yeah, so now really within DoD, inducive training is really big with us now. Compulsion used to be what we used a lot. But now we're going to clear signals training where we're giving the dogs markers and letting them know when they're doing the correct behavior that we're asking for. So it's all positive reinforcement now that we use for the dog. We've learned over time that a dog avoiding a correction compared to a dog that is trying to please you to earn a reward, you get a lot better result from that. So that's what we move to in the direction of training when it comes to either the detection side of what the dogs do, obedience, or when it comes to the patrol side where we're actually doing suspect apprehension with them.
Great. So could you tell us a little bit more about what the dogs learn to do? Suspect apprehension sounds like it would be a little different from sniffing for drugs or explosives or something like that.
Yeah, so absolutely. So most of the dogs are a dual purpose dog for the most part. So they have a detection side of them where they either find explosives or narcotics. And then the other side of what they do is what we call controlled aggression. So with that, what they're doing is we're teaching the dog basically 5 phases of aggression. So we're being able to control the dog. If a random person walks up to you, the dog can sit patiently. He doesn't bite unless he's told to. We have another one where we do, we call that a field interview. We have one where we call a pursuit and attack. So that's someone running and the dog chases after him and actually bites them. There's a standoff, which means someone runs, they give up. There's a search, so that you can actually have someone, you can down the dog, you can search someone, the dog lays there. And then we have the re-attack, to where if you are doing something with the suspect and they attack you, the dog will automatically break and bite that person. So that's kind of the phases of aggression that we teach the dogs.
Very good. So Brendan, could you tell us a little bit about how you decided to go through this training process and how you were selected for a military working dog?
Sure. At the time, the Marine Corps kind of selects their handlers a little different than the other branches. From when I got into to the canine world, it was pretty much a tryout. So we had to successfully pass the basic military police course, and then go onto your duty station. And then from there, you would pretty much have to go to your kennels and try out to be a handler. And you'd have to be handpicked. What they're looking for in handlers is people that are proficient at their job. They know what they're doing. They're not going to be a liability, and they're going to be able to take care of themselves as well as the dog, because at the end of the day, they're living, breathing animals, and they can't always take care of themselves. So you have to have the right people to be watching over them.
And Charles, could you tell us a little bit about how you and Rrobiek were first introduced, how you met and how you trained together?
I'm gonna have to ask you to say the question again. It cut out.
Could you tell us how you and Rrobiek first met and first learned to work together?
So I had been at the Old Guard at Fort Myer, Virginia for about 6 months. I was working a drug detection dog that was being retired. Took him to his last final certification, retired him, and Rrobiek happened to come back from his first deployment with his handler. And his handler got moved to our plans and training position, so he needed a new handler. And then Rrobiek became mine. Became a lot of warning tags and everything, but he panned out pretty well. So that's kind of how we first met.
Very good. Now, many of us have thought about naming a dog, and could you tell us, Erin, could you tell us how these dogs' names are chosen?
Absolutely. So we really get our dogs from two different places. One is from vendors, either stateside or in Europe. Most of those dogs already come with a name from the vendor. But another place that we get our dogs is from the breeding program, is it's where I actually work now at Lackland Air Force Base. So we breed, whelp, and train all of our dogs on Lackland. Now those dogs, as they come out, we just go through the alphabet for every litter, and it just keeps rolling over. For example, now our latest litter was the PP7 litter. So all breeding program dogs have a double letter in the beginning of their name. Like Kkeaton's name is Kkeaton, and that's how we identify they're one of our breeding program dogs. For those dogs, names that we kind of focus on or are people that have done significant things in the canine world. We've done litters after 9/11 victims, just different areas we pull names from. For example, Kkeaton is named after one of my friends that was actually killed in Afghanistan when we were deployed together in 2012, Corporal Kkeaton Coffey. He was killed in our last mission when we were deployed in May 24th of 2012. And randomly, Lackland was on the K litter on May 27th, was born of 2012, and they named a puppy Kkeaton, and somehow we were reunited and we worked together. So that's kind of how we go through the names and select them.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. As we think about these dogs in service, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your daily life when you are working together. And does a dog have to wear a uniform? What is a dog's day in service when they are working together with you? If you could tell us a bit about that experience. Charles, would you like to start on that?
Sure. For the Army, it's kind of geared like dog dependent. Your dog may wear certain gear, whatever his file says from Lackland. Usually the files from Lackland are only so useful to a point. Once you start working and adjust to a dog and the dog adjusts to you, you kind of have to pick and choose what you're going to use. You know, is the dog going to use a pinch collar? Is the dog going to use a choke? Is the dog going to not require a collar at all? You know, it kind of just depends. Same thing with their toy, the reward. It's all going to be dog specific. But they don't necessarily wear a uniform. They don't wear body armor in most cases. Even when we're deployed, the only time a harness is usually used is if we're outside the FOB, forward operating base with a special unit team. And then at that point, we'd use a harness for other things other than detection.
Thank you. Brendan, could you tell us about a day at work with Ramos, from eating, sleeping, where you would get up, how that would work?
Sure. So me and Ramos worked together on a garrison environment. We didn't do any forward deployed kind of work, which these dogs are trained to do both. But so we stuck in the law enforcement atmosphere aboard the base. So Ramos stayed in the kennel overnight. When I was off duty, he would be in the kennel. When I would go to work, first thing we do is feed him, let him take a break, a little walk, throw the ball around, get some energy out. And then just depending on what we had in store for the day would dictate what we'd be doing. So if I knew that I had a scheduled search in the morning, I might take it easy and so that he can maintain his energy levels to be able to do a proficient search. But we did anything from entry point searches, so searching vehicles at the main gates of the base, to custom searches on aircraft or boats that would come aboard our base. Anything that came from a different country were required to be searched by U.S. Customs, which we acted as being in a different country. But every day we would search the post office for everything coming in. For like me and Ramos were a narcotic team, but depending on what dog was on duty, we'd be searching for narcotics or explosives. But we would do anything just from walking patrols, just walking around, just having a police, I don't know, visual around the base so that people know that we're out working, to being searching. We did a lot of work with NCIS, with CID, like I said, U.S. Customs, and then just our normal law enforcement duties. So we were kind of all over the place. There wasn't really a set schedule. But at the end of the day, they would always be eating and sleeping back at the kennels with the rest of the dogs.
Thank you. Aaron, it's clear that Kkeaton wants to get into this conversation and wants you to talk about a day in the life of Kkeaton and what you guys are normally up to.
Absolutely. So when we were working, kind of a daily routine for us was about the same. I would show up to work. Dogs are usually fed 2 hours before any kind of activity, just to alleviate any kind of bloating, anything like that with the dog. He would get his morning run time right after that. So typically every day on duty, we would go to a field and he would get to run around for about 20 or 30 minutes. And after that, then the day would start. So it went from, if it was a busy day responding to calls, clearly we were going to canine calls as well as just regular calls for service where a dog wasn't needed. And then throughout the day, we would just do different training, detection training, because he was an explosive detection dog. So I would set up scenarios with other handlers, or I would just set things up by myself if I was the only canine unit on the road that day. And then also we would train in patrol work if it was a day that I had a decoy for me. And then typically end of the day, same thing. He rests for about 2 hours before he eats. So usually towards the end of the day, he gets to just kind of sleep for the last 2 hours. He gets to eat, and then he would go in his kennel for the day. And now that he's at my house for about 1.5 years, now he's a little more spoiled and just gets to lay around on the couch all day and chew on a toy.
Now, when they're working, is there any sort of downtime when you do just get to play around as opposed to officially being on duty?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So throughout the day, it's not all work for the dogs. I mean, we let them be dogs as well. So usually with every hour I had him at least out of the car, if it was just for a short walk or even just to go play a little bit, do a little obedience where he's getting rewarded and actually getting his toy just to play with. So just interaction with us is fun with them. Anytime that I was out with them, I had a Kong on a rope is what he liked, and he loves to play tug of war. So just a little bit of obedience just turns right into a play session. So, 10 minutes of obedience can turn into 20 minutes of me just playing with them afterwards. So yeah, it's just a lot. They get to be normal dogs. It's not all work all the time by any means.
That's good. Not all work and no play. And Charles, I see that Rrobiek there is poking up and interested in hearing some stories. Do you have a favorite memory of serving with Rrobiek that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of good memories. Most memorable time I have from him is in Syria and in Iraq, because he always was finding a way to get out of work or do something else other than searching vehicles, going out with MARSOC or any other special unit out there. Most of my memories around him involve him just being ridiculous and not actually doing his job. He does do his job well, but he finds any and all reasons to not do it.
I think we can all sympathize with that a little bit. And Brendan, do you have a favorite memory of working with Ramos you'd like to share?
Just any time that I was with them, really. When we were on night shift, I think when we had scheduled training for the morning after, I would tend to just like sleep in the kennel with them. So that was probably my favorite times, when just catch a couple hours after our shift while we're waiting on everybody else to come in, do some work. I just use him as a pillow and knock out for a little bit, which still happens today, but it's more so on the couch now.
Is that a part of official training? This is how you be a pillow as a good working dog. Did all three of you end up using your dogs as pillows on occasion? Oh, not Charles.
Oh,
How about you,
absolutely.
Aaron?
Kkeaton Keaton still does it today. Yeah, anytime I lay down, he tries to get right behind me so I can use him as a pillow for sure.
Well, we know that they are multi-talented animals, but that is one slice of it that I had not fully considered. And when you think about their roles, so on duty, off duty, what about you and your training to be able to work with them? Are there special skills that you need to bring to being a good handler of a working dog? What do you look for, Aaron?
Absolutely. So when it comes to teaming a dog, even when I was just a chief trainer, when I was still actually working before I was just a trainer where I am now, personalities absolutely is a big part of it. So you can't take a dog that's really strong and put someone that's really soft-spoken with that dog, because that dog needs someone to be able to communicate with them. So personalities definitely don't want to butt heads there. And then just experience of a handler too. So we get what we call a green dog. So a dog that comes directly from Lackland, we consider a green dog because they just have the basic training that they need. So not a good dog to put on a brand new handler, but a dog that might have been on an experienced handler for 2 years and got some training and is a lot better dog now, is a perfect dog to put on someone that's inexperienced, just coming into the canine field after they get out of canine school to start working dogs. So that's the biggest thing we look at really, is just personality of the handler and the dog, and if it's going to mesh well for them to communicate. Because when it comes down to it, everything we do when it comes to the dog is communication. So if you don't communicate correctly to the dog, you're not going to get the behavior that you're looking for. And then marking that behavior when the dog does it is very important too. So when it comes down to a handler's ability to read a dog of what he might do or what he is going to do is very important. So depending on how smart the dog is, because they're always trying to outsmart you, it's important to match a handler up that is a quick thinker if you have a dog that's always trying to get away with something, and they can catch that dog at the right time to do the behavior that you're looking for.
Interesting. As you talk about those personalities, and Charles, you were sort of suggesting that there's a certain personality in Rrobiek that you have to work with. Could you tell us a little more about his personality and how you worked with him?
So Rrobiek has a very strong personality, and it's very hard because I have a strong personality. He came from a handler that was very what's called heavy-handed, and I don't operate like that. I'd rather use my voice and be able to control things that way. But unfortunately, Rrobiek's he's very hard-headed. He's very stubborn, wants to do things his way. And what's wild is I've met 3 of his brothers and sisters, and they're all the same. They're all built the same. They're all the super red color. And then they all are very stubborn. They're all very driven. They want to do things their way, and they don't want you to pick them up. So it makes your job a little bit harder. But at the end of the day, they're amazing. He does what he needs to do and gets it done.
That's terrific. And Brendan, how would you describe the personality of Ramos?
He's got to be the exact opposite. I mean, this dog's like a definition of a teddy bear. And he got retired a little bit early just because he didn't really want to be working all the time. He's super obedient, and you never really have to like say anything more than once, which was awesome for me as a handler because he made my job so easy. But I mean, everything that he would do was just kind of, sometimes he was doing a little slower than normal from other dogs that I'd worked with. He was kind of almost harder to figure out how to work to keep his energy level high and to keep him wanting to do his task. But I mean, he's sleeping right now, and that pretty much sums up his career.
And how long is the normal career of a military working dog?
It varies. I've seen dogs retire at 2 years old for whatever. It could be a medical issue. It could be a training issue, but I've also seen dogs work until they're 14 years old. I would say average, Aaron might know a little bit better, but I would say average is somewhere between 7 and 10 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty average age. Honestly, the biggest ender of a dog's career is something medical when it comes down to it. Bad back, bad hips. The dogs are super active. We push them all the time to jump objects. They're clearly doing obstacle courses. But in my experience, a medical issue is what typically retires a dog early.
And I see Lesa there nodding, our medical expert with all of these animals. And sounds like they're working hard. What do you see as a veterinarian when you meet these animals?
Well, the first thing I see, because I always walk up and meet these dogs for the first time as I take their leash. And the first thing I see is amazing dogs that are highly trained. Clearly they're animals that one might say have the potential to be a dangerous animal to handle, but they respond so quickly to being handled, and they understand that role between the human and themselves. But like you heard mentioned here, medical problems are typically the thing that happen. Some of it is just the normal problems we see with any animal that age as they age, but clearly these are athletic dogs, and as Aaron mentioned, and orthopedic issues, the knees, the hips, they can lead your pinched nerve in a neck, perhaps, which Kkeaton had an issue with that. These are the things that can limit their ability to perform at the top notch, and because they are truly top shelf athletes when they're in the height of their work.
That's a nice analogy. These top flight athletes then have all had the experience of being reunified with someone they served with. And I know that is an incredibly moving experience. I was fortunate to see Brendan and Ramos reunified, but I wonder if you could each tell me what it means to you to be reunited with your dog after serving together. So Aaron, would you like to? Oh, Brendan, go ahead and start us off.
Sure. Like I said when I met you guys before at the Constitution, it's so like fulfilling because we spend so much time together, working together, sleeping together, like I said, and you get a bond that they say that nobody else can really understand unless you're a fellow handler, and I know Aaron and Charles will tend to that. Just the things that we do together, the stress, the emotions and everything over time, they just become a part of you. And then when you have to leave them behind, it's heartbreaking. And you just got to pray that one day you'll get them back. And I got lucky enough for that to happen. And since I've had him, it's just been such a relief. I don't have to worry about him. He's still working. When he was still working, I would have, I'd be worrying if he was being overworked or if he didn't have a proficient handler, or if he was going to get hurt or what's going on. But now that he's back in my hands, like I know exactly what he's doing all the time. So it's just like a I don't know, satisfaction thing that I know that he's in my hands now.
There you go. A member of the family has returned is what it sounds like. And
Yeah,
Charles,
absolutely.
could you tell us about your reunification?
Well, he ignored me and he decided that the doctor was his best friend and he was going to live with her forever. And then about 30 seconds to a minute later, he bolted right to me. A little confused because he had never met my daughter, was very curious as to what she was and who she was. But since they are best friends, and it's really emotional because I don't, have a lot of emotions. Very few things get my tears running. But the day I had to say goodbye to him, jokes are always said, I hope you get hurt so you can come home. Well, unfortunately that happened for him, but fortunately for me, because now he gets to live on my couch, get fat and hang out with 2 Jack Russells, a whole bunch of kids and my wife.
And tell us about that transition from military working dog to family dog. I mean, with all the training that they've been through and now all of a sudden they're allowed to just be a couch potato. How does that work?
I don't think he knows that. He doesn't know he's hurt. He doesn't know that he's had his ACL rebuilt. But he sits on my couches and tries to eat squirrels, jump fences. But at the same time, he's not adverse to my daughter putting a tutu on him. He's not adverse to, actually the other day, my daughter was painting a cardboard box like a Barbie house and he laid down with her on the floor. So he's transitioned well. It's been an adjustment, but I think the Jack Russells were his biggest adversary, but even they've kind of calmed down and accepted him.
That's a terrific vision, from military working dog to partner at the Barbie house. So that's fun. Aaron, could you tell us a little bit about Kkeaton's return to you?
Absolutely. So me getting him back was a little bit unexpected. I didn't expect him to get injured before I adopted him. I expected it to be several years for me until I got to see him again to adopt him. But when his adoption did come up, it was a little bit of a headache in the beginning because they were worried about him going and being a regular dog in someone's house, because he was very aggressive when he was a younger dog. I got that kind of trained out of him. So fortunately enough, when I went to adopt him, I was going to drive from Texas to California to go pick him up. And the gentleman that takes care of adoptions told me, reach out to American Humane. Reached out to them. They took care of everything. They assured me that they're going to send someone down there that would be able to get the dog and bring him back. So Lesa went down and got him for me. I think they bonded instantly. He's always had a soft spot in his heart for females. So Lesa packed him up and they took off across the country to Texas. And along the way, she was sending me pictures, and I thought she was never going to get here. For a little while, I thought she was going to try to keep him. But the day finally came. Lesa pulled up in the parking lot and pulled him out. And at first, me seeing him when he was actually injured, so he had a little bit of lameness in his back leg, he walked up, and when he got about 20 feet from me, he kind of looked up and he finally smelled me, and he lit up and his tail started wagging, and he ran over to me and rolled over on his back and wanted me to rub his belly. But absolutely one of the best days of my life to actually be able to get him back, and now that he lives with me.
Well, Lesa, you have had the good fortune of meeting these dogs and helping with the reunification process. Could you explain to us how American Humane gets involved and gets these dogs from all around the world home, and what does that cost to do that?
Oh, goodness. Yes, as you can imagine, depending on where these dogs are and where they need to go to get into that happy retirement, it can be very expensive. International movement of animals is problematic in even normal times, and clearly during this COVID-19 pandemic, it's it's even a bit more challenging, but it's still completely doable. We've just recently learned, and we were so happy to get Ramos out of Japan recently. But we, quite frankly, American Humane is able to do it only because of the goodwill of all of our donors that not only value our veterans and that whether they're human, but they also value our animal veterans. And I think listening to all these gentlemen here today tell you, here we have our brave patriots, and yet you can clearly see the importance that this role, the human animal bond plays with them, with this dog. And, I did not serve, so getting the opportunity to serve those that have served really makes my day. And I feel like I'm just the luckiest person in the world to get to handle these magnificent animals. And, any of us who have been a part of this process of bringing them home, it's always a bittersweet moment when we hand that leash over to where it belongs, because we bond, you can seriously bond with a dog in the days it takes to get them across. But the joy of seeing them as they recognize their best friend and realize that they are finally back together, the look on the human, the look on the dog, it's just priceless. And American Humane is devoted to this effort, and we just look forward to the next opportunity to bring more of our veterans home, furry and otherwise, and put these bonds back together.
Well, we also thank you for your service on behalf of both our four-footed veterans and their two-footed partners, because we can see the happiness that reunification brings. Well, there have been quite a number of questions coming in from folks who are watching at home. So I am going to shoot out a bunch of these questions, and one that is a logical one: what breed is used primarily, and what qualities does this breed have that make it a good service dog? So who wants to hop onto that one?
I'll start, I guess. It depends really what you're training the dog for. A lot of the dual purpose dogs that we're using are Belgian Malinois, which it looks like all three of our dogs are Mals. And then obviously everyone knows about German Shepherds being used. But then dogs that are specifically being trained for detection purposes, we'll use Labs. There's also a handful of Dutch Shepherds mixed in. Um, Sometimes the Navy will use smaller dogs for submarine searches. So I've seen Jack Russells. I know Aaron's seen a handful being down there training them. Um, but the big three I'd say would be Belgian Mals, German Shepherds, and then Dutch Shepherds, specifically for their drive and their just their natural qualities that make them good hunters, and then their loyalty as well.
Thank you. Aaron, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think he kind of covered everything there. We do have a program too that's kind of slowing down now, but we do use some Labrador Retrievers as well. But at the breeding program where we breed, we only breed Belgian Malinois and Dutch Shepherds are the two breeds that we use. And then of course we're buying the German Shepherds from vendors. But like you said, we're looking for prey drive, ball drive within a dog, and the Shepherd and the Malinois are the two dogs that really perform for us the best.
It's really kind of fascinating too when you look over the history of military working dogs, and over time through different major wars, what type of dog was the preferred. There were times early in the 20th century, during the First World War and all, where Doberman Pinschers were involved, or and then in Afghanistan and all, like I say, a lot of Labradors were, but Malinois are definitely rising to the top now.
Okay. Here's a question on a different subject. Are the commands always given to the dogs in English?
So I can kind of answer that one. If their dog is trained at Lackland, everything is going to be in English. When I was actually in the Marine Corps, I had a specialized search dog that was trained in Israel. So all of his commands, well, I had a male and a female actually, but both of their commands were all in Hebrew. So it really just depends where you get the dog, if you're buying the dog from a different vendor. But when they do, if they come through Lackland, they're going to be a conventional military working dog and not come from a different trainer. They're all going to be done in English, so they can go to any base and someone can pick that dog up. And because that's the same way you're trained in canine school, of all the commands are in English.
Thank you. Another question that came through is about the diets for the dog. With the work that they are doing, is there a special diet or is it restricted in any way?
The dogs they're really fed dependent on how the dog acts. Some dogs have more sensitive stomachs. For the most part, they'll get like a dry kibble, unless they have medical issues dictating otherwise. But generally, it's going to be a kibble, like a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening, and you kind of have to move it around from there. If a dog is losing weight, they might the vet might recommend you add to the diet or add some exercise in. If they're gaining too much weight, they might take a little bit away. It's very dog dependent. But like I said, the majority of the dogs will be on a kibble until they otherwise need it.
Now, I think Brendan, I recall when I saw you and Ramos reunified, and after the cameras stopped rolling, someone said, "What are you going to do?" "Well, we're going to go get a meatball sub and split it." Is that allowed, or should Lesa not hear that? Or
for the working dogs, they rarely get anything like that. But in retirement, we got to spoil them a little bit. They've been working hard, and dry food can get old. So he gets some snacks every day, just something to mix it up. But as far as when they're still active and they're still working every day, you can't really mess with anything because you don't want them to have some sort of medical response that it's going to take away from their duties. And Ramos got an iron stomach, so he'll eat anything. But I've seen dogs that are, they'll have the tiny bit, anything that's off their normal diet, and they'll be down for the day, down for a couple of days with stomach issues. So It just comes down to knowing your dog and what they can handle, and then what you're going to put them through after. You don't want to be running them around after you give them a meatball sub. You're going to want to hang out for a little bit and just let them kind of digest.
Thank you. And here's another question that came through. Will these dogs only respond to commands from their handler? Charles, how does that work, since I know that Rrobiek has opinions of his own?
Yes, he generally only listens to me. There's times where he'll listen to somebody else, but I've noticed that it's more so if I'm on the road wearing a military police vest, I stand out because I have the big black placards and everything on me. He'll look for other military police, but otherwise it's all dad every day, all day. Now that he's retired, I think he listens to my daughter and my wife more than me, but while we were on duty, it was definitely listen to me and only me.
So now if a young girl says, hold still while I put this tutu on you, he'll really hold still for that?
Yes, because she knows at the end of the day, he's going to get chicken or something else from her.
Very good. Well, we know they're smart animals and they learn all those lessons. So, Aaron, I have a question that came in specifically for you and Kkeaton. Is it now Lackland Air Force Base policy to do only positive training? Is this an Air Force wide policy or just Lackland? Very exciting news.
Yeah, so I mean, clearly all the dogs in the beginning that are Lackland are owned by the Air Force. They're the ones that actually run the DoD dog program. When we're there, yeah, positive reinforcement is what we're doing at Lackland. When they go to other bases, I can't speak for the Army, I can't speak for the Navy, what their training policies are, but what the dog is initially trained in is positive reinforcement. And when they ship out to go to their duty stations, they get a training jacket with them. The dog has met the minimum standard so far to be a military working dog using those training methods. So if done right, there's no reason that they should ever really have to go to compulsion with that dog. All the dogs that I currently train at Lackland don't even wear correction collars. All they wear is a leather collar, and we have no issue with the dog. Will they wear a correction collar? Yes, but that's more of a safety issue. So if something happens and they have a choke chain on, you can control the dog a little bit faster if he was to randomly bite someone on accident, something like that. But positive reinforcement is really what DoD is leaning towards now.
And isn't it beautiful that we're talking about dogs that are superpower dogs? You know, these are dogs that have the most attack potential, shall we say? And yet the way we're getting the best work out of them is by getting into their head, not by coercion. And that's a wonderful thing to see. And you know, the truth is, it works on animals and it works on people.
Absolutely.
Well, another question, why are previous handlers best suited to adopt military working dogs?
For that one, go ahead.
Sorry, you can take over.
No, I was just going to say, depending on the dog, sometimes they can only be adopted by previous handlers. For example, Kkeaton, the only way that he was going to get adopted out was to go to someone that was a handler that knew how to understand that kind of dog. He was a very strong dog when he was a working dog. So him just getting adopted out to a civilian out in town that has no training in that type of dog become a liability very quickly for someone. But when it comes down to it, if the dog throughout his career might have 4, maybe 10 handlers throughout his career, every handler is jumping at to get that dog as soon as he's retired. It turns into a fight as soon as they're like, nope, I had him last. Oh, I had him first. We fight over our dogs to see who gets them. But when it comes down to it, as long as they're going to a good home, we're happy that the dogs get retired, even if we don't get to adopt one of our old dogs.
So who does make the final decision of where a dog will be placed? And once they're placed, are they permanently with that handler?
So it's base dependent. So usually the kennel master, the person that's the supervisor of the whole kennel, is the one that says, okay, this person's going to adopt the dog. Clearly it's identified there. If it can be anyone, a civilian that can adopt the dog. Maybe the handler already has another dog, or living conditions aren't right, or that handler's overseas and he can't take a dog right now. So we can adopt them out to the public as well if it's the right dog. But it comes down to the kennel master to make that decision. But I've seen some of the meanest dogs that should have been only been military working dogs and never live in a home, there's guys that were former working dog handlers, and anytime there's a dog anywhere that's overly aggressive, that can't be with anybody, he takes the dog and he adopts him, and he takes care of that dog and makes sure he has a good remainder of his life. So there's guys out there that do everything they can to make sure these dogs get actual retirement.
And I don't want us to misrepresent the situation here by everybody we have, but there's a reasonable number of women involved too in handling, and we've got the pleasure of bringing back their dogs too. And I, as a woman, I'm thrilled to see that, because, as a dog lover, it would break my heart if I didn't have a shot at it.
Just to go off of that, that's actually how I got in touch with the American Humane Society. We retired a dog out of our kennels. It was in 2018, and to a female handler who is now in Texas with Aaron. She got her dog, and when I knew that Ramos was coming up, I said, "Hey, Brianna, like, how did you get your dog back out of Japan?" And she sent me all the info for the American Humane and Dr. Staubus, and they took everything from there. So yeah, females are they're honestly like a majority of the handlers that I've seen now coming through. They bring out different qualities sometimes that dogs will take to. Some dogs will actually be better behaved to a female handler than a male handler, and sometimes you just got to explore around as a trainer to see what dog is going to mesh better with the male or the female.
That's interesting. Here's another question from our audience. When working with your dog, what has been your biggest accomplishment? Charles, what comes to mind when you think of the work that you and Robic did together?
Well, Roby carried me my whole career at the Old Guard. So my crowning achievement is he kind of put me in a position where I got deployed to Iraq, and we were kind of just doing the mundane, working at the embassy, working on Union 3 across the street from the embassy. But he was so proficient in all the time trials and everything that they were running on the base. He was able to get me a spot to be the kennel master for the entire country of Syria. So because of him, I was able to do that. I mean, we had done other things too. We deployed we went to Kenya with Obama. We did the DC nuke summits. We've worked a lot of the VIPs. We've done sweeps of the Capitol. But the crowning achievement definitely was being able to go to Syria and be the kennel master and work with MARSOC and Special Forces and Rangers.
Oh, very exciting. Brendan, what do you think of when you think of working with Ramos?
I can't really top that. We had a pretty settled career in Japan. The most exciting stuff we would do is we'd go out with NCIS and assist them on their searches. There was a couple occasions we went out with Japanese customs and helped them with some small problems, but other than that, we stayed pretty local doing our job. Some of the cooler things that we saw together were searching some of the aircraft that would come aboard and the larger ships that would come into our the base. So we got to go in every living quarters, the cabins, everything that was on these ships and on these aircraft, which the normal people would never see. But that's pretty much our excitement.
There you go. And Aaron, how about you and Kkeaton?
I would say with us, really when I first got him was a big learning curve for both of us. He was very aggressive when I first got him, and then several months later, it just clicked with us. And I think that point where we actually clicked and we decided that we wanted to work for a team was probably the most memorable for me. Just one day he's like, "Okay, you're a good guy. We can work together." So I think that was probably one of the top moments that me and him had together.
That's great. And there's a question that has come through for Lesa, knowing that American Humane has done so much work to bring military working dogs and their handlers together, but also you've been involved with contract working dogs. Can you talk about that?
We work mostly with military working dogs. Now, Eric can probably speak more to, for example, the breeding program there at Lackland. They source other types of working dogs are involved with that. Can you tell us more about that, Aaron?
You're just talking specifically about dogs that are doing contract work?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so there's companies that are contracting and going overseas. There's several different agencies out there, and they're taking dogs over there and they're bringing them back too. It's not like it used to be where dogs were getting left in other countries and things like that. But from my experience, yeah, the contract guys are the dogs over there when they're stateside. So they're deploying to Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, doing their thing there, and they're bringing the dog right back with them. It's kind of how the contract stuff's working these days.
All right. I have two other important questions the audience has asked. Do the dogs get a day off from work, or do they have to work every day? Charles, what's your experience?
So when we're in garrison, he would get usually 2 days off. We'd work a 3 and 2, and we'd work a 12-hour shift. But when we were deployed, there was times where we would work every single day, but it would only be for 4 hours. And then there'd be other times where it would be 8 hours. Generally, while on deployment, you don't get any. If it might be a little bit, maybe a day here and there, but you're not going to get the full time off like you do in a garrison environment.
All right. And another important question, does your dog have a military rank? What is Ramos, the rank of Ramos?
So, I mean, officially they don't really get a rank, but they do come across that like they are supposed to be one rank above the handler. So when I got promoted to be a sergeant, then unofficially Ramos became a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps. You know, the ranks kind of differ in other branches, but yeah, Ramos was my boss.
Is that true in other branches? Charles, how did that work for you in the Army?
It's the same thing. It's a symbolic thing. I believe the original intent was in case something happened, you were disrespectful to your animal. That way they could get you with, assaulting somebody that was superior to you. But we've kind of outgrown that and come a long way in the dog world since Vietnam. So.
Interesting. And there's one more comment here. Someone who had the privilege of being at the reunification when Kkeaton returned, and with fond memories of that happy day, the question is, does Kkeaton still have his toy rubber grenade? It gave everybody a good laugh that day. Sounds like there's a story there, Aaron.
Yeah, he does. So my wife had bought him this rubber, it's a Kong, but it's shaped like a grenade. And that was his favorite toy whenever we were still together working. So that, yeah, the day we got reunited, I made sure I brought that with him, or brought that with me and gave it to him. But yeah, he still has it. I think he left it outside now today. But yeah, he still runs around everywhere with that grenade in his mouth. So still his favorite toy for sure.
There you go. And does Ramos have a favorite toy?
Oh, he's all over the squeaky tennis balls these days. He's been shredding them left and right, and he'll crush the squeakers right out of them. But I think it's more because he never really had the squeakers. They make a funny sound to him now, so he's loving those.
How about Robic?
He used to have a squirrel Kong, but I don't know where it is at this point because he's somebody bought him a bark box in the recruiting station, and he's obsessed with this barrel that you're supposed to put peanut butter in. But because I have Jack Russells, I can't put peanut butter in it because they'd be able to eat it out of the hole because it's huge.
Well, it is so wonderful to hear about how you and your dogs have both done a wonderful job in service, and it sounds like a successful and a happy retirement. Before we wrap up, I wanted to give you each a chance if there's something else you think that our folks should know about the importance of military working dogs. We can hear something from each of you, and why don't we start with Aaron?
Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway that people should know is a lot of people think that it's all work with the dogs all the time. And it's, compulsion work that we're doing with the dogs and doing it that way. The dogs have plenty of fun, and it's not all work. Just the way we do training now, the dogs are having fun constantly. And they enjoy what they do. And when they retire, they actually do miss the work they used to do. It's a big change for them. And yeah, they like laying on the couch now, things like that. But the dogs actually do love the work they do. And just people know that we're doing it the right way, and the dogs are always having a good time.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Brendan, what are your reflections?
I mean, I was really going to go off the same page just to make sure that people don't think that these dogs are slaves their whole lives. As handlers, it's our job to make sure they're getting taken care of every day when they're working. Um, they have fun. That's just like Aaron said. They really enjoy biting stuff and running around and everything else. Ramos still bothers me just to go run out the door and just sprint around the backyard or bring him to a big field and we throw the ball around for hours. Just things that they like to do. You know, obviously their life is a little different from retirement and working, but uh, they they don't have a bad life. They get it pretty easy, in my opinion.
And Charles, do you have a final reflection you and Rrobiek want to share?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is the fact that everybody seems to think that dog handling is easy. It's one of the things I kind of face now recruiting. Army usually gets about 13 slots a year, and it's really hard to justify putting somebody in that doesn't have the qualities to be a dog handler directly into the canine world. And you know, dogs aren't a piece of equipment as much as they have a serial number tattooed in their ear. They have a personality, they have feelings. And they require maintenance and love just as much as any other person or animal.
Well, thank you. The messages are coming in from the audience, thanking you for sharing your experience. I want to offer Lesa the chance to share her reflections, since she has been such an important part. She and American Humane have helped to make many of these reunifications possible.
Well, I want to thank these working dogs for protecting our troops and protecting us. And they do it with a happy heart, and they do it with the love that just like anyone's pet dog gives. And American Humane is thrilled to help these dogs find their way into the retirement they deserve and reestablish that bond. We always want to recognize the importance that it plays to the mental health of our service members. It's the heartbreak that happened after Vietnam when dogs had to be left behind. That scar still lingers in those who served. So these are amazing pieces of equipment that can't be touched by anything in any technology that we have today. And meanwhile, they're also our best friends. So it's wonderful.
That is a wonderful combination, to be your best friend and to be your best working ally, the best technology right there in that nose that we can't replicate. So I want to, on behalf of the USS Constitution Museum, I want to offer thanks to all of you for joining us today. Thank you to American Humane for the work that you do in bringing these dogs back to their handlers. I have to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Institute for Museum and Library Services, who have helped the USS Constitution Museum to run our programming and to bring the stories of veterans forward and to share them more broadly. And I need to thank everyone in the audience. So many of you have served our country and have supported American Humane and the USS Constitution Museum. So I want to thank everyone who has worn the uniform of our country for your service and all those who are still in service today. And before we go, we're going to see if we can get a paw wave from our furry friends as we sign off. Oh, look at that. I can see 1, 2, 3 paws. That is terrific. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. It's time for them to go run and play and get fed. And thank you all for being a part of, oh, he's back. Thanks for being a part of our Veterans Day program today. It's been great fun.